Hello, my name is Ed Turner. I'm Curator of Insects at the University Museum of Zoology and also a Fellow at Clare College in Cambridge. What I want to do today is talk about some of the reasons that I think being based in Cambridge is so incredible, both as being an undergraduate and being a researcher. And for me, one of the key things is the amazing collections we have in Cambridge. And that includes all of the different museums, but it also includes Botanic Garden as well. Now I'm a little bit biased, but what I'm going to focus on is the Zoology Museum collection. And this really is amazing. It's a resource for both teaching and also for research. I can't show you the museum right now, but what I can show you is a quick picture of it. This is the public area, one of the public areas. It's got these fantastic huge skeletons and things. You can really walk amongst some of the enormous species that used to walk the world and still do in some cases. We've also got these fantastic behind the scenes stores as well, which is where we keep the majority of our specimens. In particular, we've got a dry vertebrate store which is full of a massive collection of shells. So again, shells collected all over the world, a huge resource. We've got a bird store, we've got thousands of bird skins and also eggs. We've got a vertebrate store which has got a lot of our skeletal remains. We've got a spirit store which is all of the things that have to be stored in alcohol, the wet specimens. And we've also got, my favourite bit, the insect store. We've got over a million different individual specimens of insects collected over the last 200 years. And as you can imagine, this is an incredible resource for undergraduate teaching. We can bring undergraduates actually into the collection and see some of this amazing stuff. We can also use it for undergraduate projects. And of course we can carry out research on it to try and understand how the world has changed, and also indeed the evolutionary relationships between different groups of organisms. I want to illustrate this with just a tiny bit of the insect collection. So remember, we've got over a million insect specimens, but hopefully you can see this here. This is some of the insects I've borrowed. This is British butterflies I've borrowed from the museum collection. And what it illustrates in a glance is some of the sheer diversity of animal life on the planet, sheer diversity of insects, but also ways that you can understand how the world has changed. Our butterflies have been collected over the last sort of 180, 200 years. So they represent an amazing time series of change, particularly locally, particularly around Cambridgeshire. And you can see this here as well. We've got some species, so things like these ones, there's the small white and the large white. These are things which are still common in the Cambridgeshire countryside or across the UK. And 200 years ago they were common as well. You've got other things which used to be much more common, but are now much rarer. An example of this is this beautiful butterfly here. This is the British swallowtail. This used to be found in Cambridge, it used to be found in the Wickham Fen until the last 50 years, but it's now extinct there, locally extinct. It's only found now in the Norfolk Broads. It's contracted its range. And the reason for that is probably clearance and drainage of the fens, so habitat change. And you've got still other species which have declined entirely, have disappeared entirely from the UK. An example of that is up here. This is the black-veined white, which used to be found in the UK, but now is locally extinct here. It's not found anywhere in the UK anymore. In contrast, you've got a few other things. You can see here, this one here is the common butterfly, this is the upper side, this is the underside. This is something that used to be rather rare, but has now become rather more common. So some species, a lot of species, have declined in numbers, while other species have increased, and other species have remained more or less stable. Now one of the things we're able to do in the museum is to look at that, to understand which species have changed over time. And the key thing about museum records, which makes it very different from most other ecological records, is that they go back hundreds of years. So most modern ecological recording, finding out where species are and what they're doing, basically stems from the 70s onwards. With our records, we can go back 200 years. So it places all of these modern records in context. It allows us to see whether things have changed not just in the last few decades, but in the last 2 centuries. So it's an incredible resource for understanding not just the diversity of life on Earth, but also how things are changing. And of course, where we are in Cambridge is also, put this down very carefully, where we are in Cambridge is also a centre of conservation research as well. So for my kind of work, the information that we get from our collections can be directly applied to modern conservation. If we find a species decline, we can begin to understand why that's happened, how severe that decline's been, and that's the kind of information that conservation organisations need to be able to reverse those declines, to bring these species back. So hopefully I persuaded you that having these collections embedded in Cambridge makes Cambridge an incredibly special place to be. It's the sort of thing as an undergraduate you can access, you can find out more about the natural world or whatever you're interested in. There's a diverse range of collections across the university, of course. And as a researcher, it means we've got these unique resources to be able to draw upon to understand more about the world around us.